My daughter's husband thought I was just a clueless old man, someone too slow, too trusting, too blind to see what was right in front of me. He underestimated me. He thought he could sneak behind my back, take what didn't belong to him, and walk away clean. But that night, when he pulled open the drawer in my bedroom, expecting to find the key to my safe, his face turned from pale as chalk to the color of a rotting lemon. He realized too late that I wasn't the fool he believed I was. And me? I just sat there in the darkness, smiling to myself, already knowing exactly how this was going to end. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening in the comments. Your support helps us share more stories like this one. It all started innocently enough, or so I thought. We were sitting around my dining table, enjoying what should have been a peaceful family dinner. Emily, my 8-year-old daughter, was talking about her new book club, and for a moment life almost felt normal again. Then Tyler, her husband, looked up from his plate and dropped a question that sliced through the quiet like a knife. "So, Richard, that safe upstairs, what kind of lock does it have?" The fork froze halfway to my mouth. The air in the room shifted instantly. Emily nearly choked on her water, her eyes darting toward him. "Tyler, what kind of question is that?" But Tyler didn't look at her. His gaze stayed locked on mine, steady, probing, predatory. There was something calculated behind his expression that made my chest tighten. I set my fork down carefully, giving myself a moment to think, to measure my response. "Just curious about home security," he continued smoothly, that practiced smile sliding onto his face. "You know, with all the break-ins happening around here lately." "Break-ins?" I'd lived in this neighborhood in Coeur d'Alene for 15 years. The most excitement we'd had lately was Mrs. Patterson's cat getting stuck in a tree last month. "What break-ins?" I asked, my voice steady but cautious. Tyler waved his hand dismissively. "Oh, you probably don't hear about them. They try to keep it quiet to avoid causing panic." He leaned forward then, elbows resting on my dining table like he owned the place. "But a man your age, living in a house this size, you must have some serious security measures in place, right?" Emily shifted uncomfortably in her chair. "Dad's always been careful about locking up," she said softly, trying to diffuse the tension. Tyler nodded absently, pretending to be reassured, but his eyes told a different story. "Right. But what about insurance?" he pressed, his tone growing slightly firmer. "I mean, if something happened to you, God forbid, Emily would need to know where everything important is kept, wouldn't she?" The room suddenly felt smaller, tighter, like the walls had leaned in an inch. I studied his face carefully, noting the subtle twitch of his jaw, the slight dilation of his pupils, the way his fingers drummed on the table when I didn't immediately answer. Finally, I said evenly, "I have everything organized. Emily knows what she needs to know." Tyler smiled faintly, but there was no warmth in it. "But does she know about the key?" The words hung in the air like smoke. Emily's brow furrowed in confusion. "What key?" she asked, glancing between us. Tyler's smile widened just a little, but there was something sharp beneath it, like glass beneath velvet. "The one in your dad's bedroom drawer." "The one that—" My voice cut him off before he could finish. "How do you know about any key in my bedroom?" The words came out harsher than I intended, but I didn't regret them. For just a fraction of a second, his carefully constructed mask slipped, and I saw the cold calculation hiding beneath the charming son-in-law act. Then, just as quickly, the performance returned. "I was looking for aspirin last week," he said smoothly, his tone rehearsed, "when my head was killing me. Emily told me to check your bathroom cabinet, but I accidentally opened the wrong drawer first. Sorry, didn't mean to invade your privacy." Emily nodded quickly, her voice soft and sincere. "I remember that headache. You were miserable that night." But I remembered that night too, and my memory didn't match his story. He'd been upstairs for nearly 30 minutes after dinner, claiming he had stomach troubles. Plenty of time to do more than look for aspirin. "The aspirin's in the medicine cabinet," I said quietly, holding his gaze. "It always has been." I caught the tiniest flicker in his expression, a clenched jaw, an imperceptible tightening around the eyes before he gave me a practiced shrug. "Must have been out of it from the pain," he said casually, but I could hear the faint edge in his voice. After that, the conversation limped along awkwardly, but Tyler wasn't finished. He kept circling back to subtle questions about my bank, about who else had keys to the house, about my routines. Each one felt like a finger probing for weakness, testing boundaries I didn't want crossed. When dinner finally ended, Emily jumped up quickly. "I'll handle cleanup tonight, Dad. You cooked. I started stacking plates anyway." "I don't mind," I said, already falling into my usual rhythm. Washing the dishes was how I processed things, how I thought, and tonight my mind was racing. "Come on, honey," Tyler said softly, placing a hand on Emily's shoulder. "Let your dad handle the kitchen. We should get some rest." They disappeared upstairs, their bedroom door closing softly behind them. I stood at the sink, scrubbing the plates automatically, my hands moving on instinct while my thoughts spiraled. His questions about the safe, the way he knew about a key he shouldn't have known existed, his casual mention of my hypothetical death, and Emily's inheritance, it all piled up into something I could no longer ignore. For 3 weeks there had been little signs, small inconsistencies, moments that made me pause but not act. But tonight was different. Something fundamental had shifted. The walls of my home, once my refuge, suddenly felt exposed. And deep down, I knew one thing for certain. Tyler Evans was hiding something, and I was going to find out exactly what it was. That night, after the dishes were cleaned and the kitchen was spotless, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted inside my own house. The walls seemed closer somehow, the silence heavier. I climbed the stairs slowly, my hand grazing the old wooden banister, and that's when I noticed my bedroom door, standing slightly ajar. 2 inches of darkness visible through the gap. My chest tightened immediately. I always close my door. Always. 40 years of living alone had etched certain habits deep into my bones, habits I rarely broke. And tonight, before dinner, I knew for certain the door had been closed. I stopped on the top step, frozen, listening. Nothing. No footsteps. No creak of floorboards. No voices from the guest room where Emily and Tyler were staying. Only the soft, familiar, settling sounds of an old house and the pounding of my own heart. Slowly, I pushed the door open, expecting it to creak, but it didn't. I oiled the hinges last winter, and now the silence felt wrong. My bedroom looked normal at first glance. My bed was still perfectly made, the reading glasses perched neatly on the nightstand, the lamp at the same exact angle I always left it. But decades of methodical living had trained my eyes to notice the smallest discrepancies. The closet door, usually shut tight, hung open by exactly 4 inches. My dresser drawers didn't sit flush anymore. The second drawer from the top, the one where I kept my important papers, had been shoved in carelessly. A corner of a manila folder peeked out like a yellow tongue. My stomach clenched. I walked to the dresser slowly, my fingertips grazing the wood. I pulled the drawer out completely. The folders inside had been rifled through. Someone had tried to put them back in order, but not well enough. Insurance documents were mixed in with bank statements. My will, which always sat in the back, had migrated forward. Whoever did this knew exactly what they were looking for, and I didn't have to guess who it was. I reached under the lip of the drawer, fingers searching for the small brass key I'd kept taped there for 12 years. My fingertips brushed the smooth wood where the tape used to be. Gone. I checked twice, then a third time, my heart pounding harder with each pass. The key to my safe, the one Tyler had casually brought up over dinner, as if by accident had been discovered and stolen. My hands trembled, but not from fear, from anger. This wasn't random, this wasn't curiosity. This was calculated, deliberate. Tyler had searched my private space, gone through my life, and taken something he had no right to. I stepped into the walk-in closet and knelt by the safe, a compact steel model bolted into the floorboards. The digital lock still worked, but that didn't matter. Tyler didn't need the code anymore. He had the manual override, standing there, surrounded by decades of possessions, my late wife's keepsakes, my private records, my life stored in metal and paper. I felt exposed, violated. How long had this been going on? How many times had he been in here while Emily and I were downstairs, drinking tea or watching the news, oblivious? This wasn't just theft. It was intimate, personal. And yet, amid the growing fury in my chest, another thought crystallized. Tyler had made a mistake. He thought I wouldn't notice. He thought I was just another aging man, too tired to pay attention, too grateful for company to see what was happening right under my nose. He was wrong. I carefully closed the dresser drawer, returning every detail to its place, leaving no trace that I knew. If Tyler believed he was acting undetected, I needed him to keep believing that. Let him feel clever. Let him get comfortable. Because from this moment on, the game had changed. I lay in bed that night, sleep impossible, my mind replaying every red flag I'd ignored these past 3 weeks. Tyler's story about losing his job that never quite made sense. His endless questions about my financial situation. The way his eyes studied my house like blueprints. At exactly 11:47 p.m., according to the glowing green digits on my bedside clock, I heard its soft footsteps downstairs, crossing the living room floor. Not Emily's light step, but heavier, deliberate. Tyler. I held my breath, straining to listen, and then I heard it. His voice, low and urgent, carrying through the old ductwork to the heating vent beneath my bed. "Yeah, it's me," he whispered, his tone sharp. "Everyone's asleep." My skin went cold. Tyler was on the phone at nearly midnight. I slid silently out of bed, my bare feet cool against the hardwood, and crouched near the vent where sound sometimes carried strangely well in this house. "The old man's definitely loaded," Tyler said, his words dripping with arrogance. "I found bank statements, investment portfolios, the whole thing. We're talking serious money here." My stomach dropped. We weren't just dealing with petty theft. He was plotting something bigger, something coordinated. Then Tyler said something that made my blood run colder than ice. "Tomorrow night," he murmured. "Emily's going to her book club meeting. She goes every Tuesday, 7 to 9. Gives us perfect timing." Us. He wasn't working alone. My hands trembled slightly as I grabbed my phone from the nightstand and opened the voice recorder app. Whatever happened next, I was going to need proof. "I already have the safe key," Tyler was saying confidently. "Grabbed it earlier today while we were having dinner. The old fool keeps everything important in there. Cash, jewelry, bank info, all of it." My jaw tightened as I pressed record. Then, Tyler's voice dropped lower, his words coming out faster, harsher, desperate. I know, the timeline's tight, but my gambling debts aren't going away. These guys aren't exactly patient, if you know what I mean. This has to happen now. Gambling debts. That explained everything. The pressure, the obsession with money, the calculated manipulation. But the number he said next nearly knocked the air out of me. 65 grand, Tyler whispered sharply. "I owe them 65,000, and they're breathing down my neck." I gripped my phone so tightly it hurt. This wasn't just theft. This was survival, at least in his mind. But he wasn't going to survive this the way he thought. "Don't worry," he added confidently, a hint of smugness in his voice. "By Thursday, we'll be gone. I'll tell Emily I got a job offer out of state, something urgent, and she'll believe me. The old man won't even realize what hit him until we're long gone." Then I heard him laugh, low and sharp, a sound that made my skin crawl. "Yeah, well, maybe he should have been more careful about who he let into his house. Life lesson, right?" The call ended. I heard him moving around downstairs for another minute, probably checking locks or windows, then the soft creak of the stairs as he climbed back up, quiet as a thief, which, of course, he was. I quickly stopped the recording and slid my phone beneath my pillow, pretending to be asleep. Through the crack in my door, I saw his shadow move past, then the faint click of the guest room door closing. I lay there in the darkness, my mind racing. Tyler had gambling debts big enough to involve dangerous people. He had an accomplice. He had the key to my safe. And he had a plan to disappear, taking my daughter with him into whatever mess he'd created for himself. But Tyler Evans had made one catastrophic mistake. He thought I was helpless. What he didn't know, what he couldn't possibly understand, was that I'd spent 28 years as an insurance investigator. I'd dealt with con artists, liars, and desperate men like him before. And if Tyler thought he could outsmart me, he was about to learn just how wrong he was. Lying there, staring at the ceiling, I made myself a promise. Tomorrow, I would start preparing. Quietly, carefully. Tyler thought he was hunting me, but he had no idea he'd just stepped into my trap. The next morning, I woke at 6:30, same as always. Sunlight filtered softly through the blinds, and for anyone watching, it would have looked like just another peaceful morning in my quiet house. But inside, everything was different. The phone under my pillow held proof Tyler Evans's own voice, confessing to debts, theft, and betrayal. I had spent the rest of the night lying awake, rehearsing my every move for the day ahead. By the time I came downstairs, the plan was already forming in my mind. The smell of fresh coffee filled the kitchen. I cracked eggs into a pan, my motions calm, steady, measured. This was about control now, control of the situation, control of the narrative, and control of Tyler's next steps. I heard soft footsteps behind me and turned to see Emily, still in her robe, her hair slightly messy from sleep. She smiled, the kind of innocent, tired smile only my daughter could manage. "Morning, Dad," she yawned, reaching for a mug. "Sleep well?" I returned her smile easily. "Like a baby." And then Tyler came down 20 minutes later, freshly showered, confident, wearing the easy grin of a man who thought he was winning. "Beautiful morning," he said, sliding into his chair at the table as if he owned it. "What's everyone got planned for today?" I poured his coffee carefully, setting the cup down without so much as a tremor. "Oh, the usual," I replied lightly. "Might run some errands later." Tyler's eyes sharpened almost imperceptibly. "Errands? What kind?" "Just odds and ends," I said casually. "Hardware store, maybe the bank." It was subtle, but I saw it a tiny twitch near his left eye, the smallest ripple of tension beneath his carefully composed surface. "Nothing exciting," I added, buttering my toast. Emily laughed softly. "Dad's always been paranoid about checking his accounts in person," she teased. "Old habits die hard." I smiled faintly and corrected her, just loud enough for Tyler to hear. "Not paranoid," I said evenly. "Careful." Tyler nodded enthusiastically. Too enthusiastically. "Absolutely right, Richard. Can't be too careful these days. Identity theft, online scams. It's a jungle out there for someone your age." There it was again, the quiet dismissal wrapped in false concern, the subtle jab designed to make me feel small. I let it slide, giving him nothing to work with. "Speaking of careful," Tyler continued, leaning forward slightly, "I've been thinking about your home security. This neighborhood seems quiet, sure, but you never know." Emily rolled her eyes gently. "It's perfectly safe, Tyler. Dad's lived here 15 years without any problems." But Tyler wasn't listening to her. His attention stayed locked on me, calculating. "Still," he said thoughtfully, "a man living alone with valuable things in the house, it pays to be prepared. You mentioned that safe upstairs. Is that where you keep your important documents?" I took a slow sip of my coffee, watching him carefully over the rim. "Some things," I said calmly. His expression didn't change, but his fingers tapped against the table once, twice, 3 times. "What about cash?" he asked lightly. "I mean, if the banks went down or something unexpected happened, it's always smart to have emergency funds on hand, right?" The audacity was breathtaking. He was sitting at my breakfast table, drinking coffee I'd made, eating food I'd bought, and asking me to inventory my assets for his convenience. I kept my tone neutral, letting no irritation show. "I have what I need," I said simply. And then just for him I added, "And I sleep like a rock these days, out cold as soon as my head hits the pillow." Tyler's posture relaxed almost instantly. He thought he'd learned something useful. Perfect. After breakfast, Tyler announced he had some calls to make about job prospects, while Emily decided to organize their things in the guest room. That was my window. I grabbed my keys, put on my jacket, and said lightly, "I think I'll run those errands now. You two enjoy some quiet time together." As I backed the car out of the driveway, I caught at Tyler watching me from upstairs. But he wasn't standing at the guest room window. He was in my bedroom. My grip on the steering wheel tightened until my knuckles turned white. He was confirming where the safe was, probably double-checking the drawer where I used to keep the key. Let him look, I thought. Let him get comfortable. He had no idea what I had planned for him tonight. The hardware store was my first stop. I moved slowly through the aisles, picking up what I needed, and thinking through every step of the trap forming in my mind. I grabbed a small, spring-loaded confetti cannon, the kind they use for parties, and gender reveals, compact, reliable, easy to modify. Then I picked up 2 bags of ultrafine glitter, silver and gold, the kind that sticks to everything, the kind you can't wash off no matter how hard you try. If Tyler wanted to play thief, I would make sure he looked the part. My next stop was the electronics store, where a helpful young clerk named Kevin Tran walked me through the options for wireless security cameras. "Lot of break-ins in your area?" he asked as he showed me a compact model, No bigger than a deck of cards. Something like that, I said evenly. I need something small, discreet, with good night vision. Wireless, if possible. Kevin nodded and handed me a sleek little unit that connected directly to my phone, complete with motion detection, crystal clear infrared, and 8 hours of battery life. Perfect. I paid cash, thanked him, and headed home, the camera sitting in the passenger seat like a secret weapon. Back at the house, Emily and Tyler were watching television in the living room, their laughter spilling into the hallway like nothing was wrong. I smiled politely, excused myself, and went upstairs to my bedroom. Once inside, I locked the door and got to work. First came the confetti cannon. I dismantled it carefully in my workshop downstairs, replacing the harmless paper bits with my glitter mixture and testing the spring tension. I needed it sensitive enough to trigger when someone reached inside the drawer, but not so delicate that it would go off by accident. After several trial runs with a wooden spoon, I found the perfect calibration. Then I set the trap. I positioned the cannon deep in the drawer, where the real key used to be, and placed a small, fake brass key near the front, an old luggage key that looked close enough to the real thing to fool anyone in a hurry. It was the perfect bait. Tyler would spot it immediately, reach confidently, and that's when the glitter bomb would detonate, marking him head to toe in sparkling evidence. Once the trap was armed, I turned to the camera. I needed the angle just right, low enough to capture Tyler's approach, but high enough to film the explosion in all its glory. After testing several positions, I nestled it between books on my nightstand, angled precisely toward the dresser. Unless you knew exactly where to look, it was invisible. I tested the feed through my phone. The image was sharp, the audio crisp, the motion detection flawless. Every move Tyler made would be recorded in high definition. By 1:45 the afternoon, everything was in place. The glitter bomb was ready. The camera was live. The safe key was tucked safely in the kitchen junk drawer under a mess of rubber bands and twist ties, where Tyler would never think to look. All I had to do now was wait. I walked back downstairs, calm as ever, and found Tyler scrolling on his phone. He barely glanced up when I entered, but I caught at the faintest flicker in his eyes, the quiet suspicion, the anticipation. He thought he had me figured out. He thought tonight would be his victory, but by the time the sun set, he'd learned that some old men don't just defend themselves, they bite back. Dinner that night passed quietly, too quietly. Emily chatted softly about her book club, while Tyler checked his phone every few minutes, pretending to scroll casually but betraying the restless anticipation beneath his calm exterior. I played my role perfectly, the tired old man, slow and distracted, sipping my tea like someone already half asleep. By 8 o'clock, we settled in the living room, Emily curled up on the couch with a book while I claimed my usual armchair. I rubbed my temples slowly and let out a sigh. "Long day," I murmured, just loud enough for Tyler to hear. "Think I'll turn in early tonight." The moment I said it, Tyler's head snapped up ever so slightly, his eyes cutting toward me before he forced his expression back to neutral. He wanted me asleep. Perfect, but Tyler wasn't done playing. "Actually, Richard," he said casually, leaning back on the sofa, "I was hoping we could share a drink first. You know, father and son bonding time." His tone was light, but too practiced, too calculated. Emily smiled, still reading. "That's sweet," she said absently. "You two should spend more time together." Tyler seized the moment. "I was thinking about that bottle of Macallan I saw in your kitchen premium stuff, perfect for a little nightcap." My expression stayed neutral, but internally, I smiled. He'd been planning this all day, setting up this exact moment. "I appreciate the thought," I said gently, "but I'm on medication these days. Doesn't mix well with alcohol." Tyler's smile faltered, just for a fraction of a second. "Come on," he pressed, his voice playful but insistent. "One small glass won't hurt." Emily frowned slightly. "Tyler, don't pressure him. If Dad says no, it's no." I shook my head, feigning mild embarrassment. "Really, I should avoid it entirely," I said softly, adding a small sigh for effect. Tyler hesitated, then tried a different approach. "What about just a toast, a tiny sip to celebrate family?" The persistence was telling. I didn't have to taste his drink to know what was in it, something strong enough to keep me under until morning. "Tell you what," I said finally, pushing myself up from the chair. "I think I'll just take one of those sleeping pills and call it a night. Doctor prescribed them last month, knocks me right out." Relief washed over his face like sunlight breaking through clouds. "That sounds perfect," he said smoothly. "You need your rest." Emily kissed my cheek softly. "Good night, Dad." "Night, sweetheart." I made a show of climbing the stairs slowly, gripping the railing like an exhausted man. At the top, I turned and called down, "Don't stay up too late, you two." "Sleep well, Richard," Tyler said, his voice warm, his eyes cold. In my bedroom, the performance ended. I locked the door softly and checked my setup one last time. The glitter bomb sat ready inside the second drawer, the dummy key in plain sight at the front. The camera feed on my phone showed the perfect angle, capturing both the dresser and the door. I turned off the lights, slipped under the covers fully clothed, and positioned myself so I could see the hallway through the narrow gap in my door. Downstairs, I heard the television playing softly. At 9:42, I heard Emily's footsteps on the stairs, then the faint click of the guest room door closing. Silence followed. Tyler stayed downstairs waiting for the sleeping pill to work its magic, waiting for his moment. The minutes crawled by like hours. I checked my phone: 10:30, 11:15, 12:07. Each creak of the house made my heart hammer louder. I kept my breathing deep and steady, rehearsing every step of what was about to happen. Then, at exactly 2:43 a.m., it began. A faint creak on the staircase broke the silence. Slow, careful, deliberate. Through the night vision feed on my phone, I watched the hallway glow in muted tones of green and gray. Tyler's shadow stretched across the frame, his movements smooth, calculated, almost professional. He'd learned the quirks of the house in his 3-week stay, avoiding the groaning spots on the steps, pausing between each one to listen. The hallway floorboard outside my room whispered under his weight, then stopped. He was listening, testing, making sure the sleeping pill had done its work. I kept my breathing steady, the performance of my life, my daughter's future hanging in the balance. The door handle turned slowly, soundlessly, until my door cracked open just enough for him to slip inside. He paused in the doorway, his silhouette outlined faintly by the soft glow of the hallway nightlight. He watched me for 30 seconds, perfectly still, studying what he thought was an unconscious, defenseless man. Satisfied, he moved silently across the room, his dark clothing blending into the shadows. He went straight for the dresser, like a predator drawn to the kill. 3 weeks of reconnaissance had taught him exactly where to go, exactly what to look for. He crouched, his hands reaching for the second drawer, the one where he believed my key was hidden. The drawer slid open smoothly, soundless on its tracks. For a split second, I saw his body language change. His shoulders eased, his breath slowed, his posture radiated triumph. He thought he'd won. His hand reached confidently for the dummy key, fingertips brushing the metal. And then, boom! The confetti cannon detonated with a sharp, glorious pop, filling the room with a dazzling explosion of silver and gold glitter. It shot upward in a sparkling cloud, coating Tyler head to toe in shimmering chaos. The sound was louder than I expected, echoing like a gunshot in the stillness of the night. Tyler stumbled backward, cursing under his breath, his hands flying up instinctively as the glitter rained down over his face, his hair, his clothes. In the night vision feed, he looked like a broken disco ball, furious, panicked, and sparkling from head to toe. I sat up in bed, pretending to be startled, and flicked on the bedside lamp. "What on earth?" I shouted, my voice pitched perfectly between confusion and alarm. Tyler froze mid-motion, his wide, glitter-covered eyes locking on mine. He clutched the dummy key in his right hand like incriminating evidence, his mouth opening and closing soundlessly as tiny flecks of gold drifted from his hair. I heard a noise," he stammered finally, his voice cracking. "Thought someone was breaking in." "Breaking in?" I repeated, my tone laced with practiced disbelief. "Into my dresser drawer?" His gaze darted wildly around the room, searching for an explanation that didn't exist, and then came the sound of rushing footsteps from the hallway. Emily's door flew open, her voice calling, panicked and sharp. "Dad? What happened?" Tyler's entire body tensed as Emily appeared in the doorway, tying her robe hastily, her face pale with worry. Her eyes moved from me sitting up in bed, looking startled but unharmed, to Tyler, standing frozen by my dresser, covered in glitter like a failed holiday ornament. For a few seconds, the room was silent except for the faint hiss of glitter still settling onto the hardwood floor. Tyler, she whispered finally, her voice trembling. Why, why do you look like that? Why are you in Dad's room at 3 in the morning? Tyler swallowed hard, his jaw flexing. I heard something, he repeated weakly. I came to check on your father. And ended up coated in glitter? Emily's voice sharpened as her confusion morphed into suspicion. What exactly were you checking, Tyler? He floundered, brushing at his shirt as the ultrafine glitter clung stubbornly to his skin, refusing to be shaken off. It's some kind of security device, he said quickly. It must have gone off when I opened the drawer. Emily's eyes snapped to the open drawer, then back to him. Why, she asked slowly, were you opening my father's dresser drawer in the middle of the night? Tyler blinked rapidly, searching desperately for words that wouldn't come. He gestured vaguely toward me. I thought he might have sleep aids, he said, his voice cracking again. You were tossing and turning, Emily, and I thought... Tyler, I interrupted gently, letting just a hint of steel enter my tone. My medications have always been in the bathroom cabinet. Silence settled over the room like a heavy blanket. Emily's breathing quickened, her gaze moving between the open drawer, the dummy key in his hand, and the glitter clinging to every inch of his body. In that instant, I could see the walls of trust beginning to crumble around her. Tyler realized it too. His mask slipped completely, and for the first time since he married my daughter, I saw him without charm, without calculation, stripped bare and cornered, and he knew it. He'd fallen right into my trap, and every piece of evidence, the glitter, the camera recording, the dummy key still in his hand, screamed guilt louder than words ever could. And this was only the beginning. For a long, charged moment, the only sound in the room was the faint patter of glitter falling from Tyler's hair onto the hardwood floor. His chest rose and fell rapidly, his jaw working as he searched for an explanation that didn't exist. Emily stood frozen in the doorway, her robe loosely tied, her face pale beneath the hallway light. Her eyes moved from me, sitting upright in bed, to Tyler standing by my open dresser drawer, shimmering like a failed Christmas decoration, the fake brass key clutched tight in his fist. I can explain, Tyler said finally, his voice hoarse, strained. Then explain, Emily whispered, her tone sharp as broken glass. He hesitated, glancing at me, then back at her, scrambling for a lifeline. I heard a noise, he said again, clinging to his lie like a drowning man to driftwood. I thought someone was breaking in. I came in to check on your dad. Emily's brows knit together as confusion hardened into suspicion. And you ended up opening his dresser drawer? At 3 o'clock in the morning? Tyler shifted uncomfortably, brushing at his shirt as though he could erase the evidence glittering across his body. I thought maybe he kept something in there. Something useful. I was worried. Worried, she repeated, her voice flat, hollow. And the key? What about that key in your hand? Tyler froze. His knuckles whitened around the dummy key. He began, but no words followed. Emily's gaze sharpened like a blade. Tyler, tell me the truth. He opened his mouth again, but nothing came out. The silence stretched taut between us, so heavy it seemed to bend the air. I decided then it was time. My daughter deserved the truth, even if it shattered her. I reached slowly for my phone on the nightstand, my movements deliberate, my gaze locked on Tyler. Emily, I said quietly, there's something you need to hear. Tyler's eyes widened as his glitter-covered face drained of what little color remained. Richard, don't what? Emily snapped suddenly, turning on him with a fierceness I'd rarely seen in her. Don't what, Tyler? He stammered. It's not what you think. I can explain everything. Then you'll want to listen, I said calmly, unlocking my phone and pulling up the voice recorder. My thumb hovered briefly over the play button before I pressed it. Tyler's voice filled the room, low and unmistakable. Yeah, it's me. Everyone's asleep. The old man's definitely loaded. I found bank statements, investment portfolios, the whole thing. We're talking serious money here. Emily flinched like she'd been struck. Her hand flew to her mouth as she stared at Tyler, her face paling further with every word. He tried to speak, but the recording rolled on mercilessly, exposing every secret he thought was buried. Tomorrow night, Emily's going to her book club meeting. She goes every Tuesday, 7 to 9. Gives us perfect timing. Us, Emily whispered, her voice trembling violently. Tyler's breathing quickened, but still the recording continued. I already have the safe key. Grabbed it earlier today while we were having dinner. The old fool keeps everything important in there. Cash, jewelry, probably more bank information. Look, I know you're worried about the timeline, but my gambling debts aren't going away. These guys aren't exactly patient, if you know what I mean. This has to happen now. Emily's knees buckled slightly as she steadied herself on the doorframe, her eyes locking on Tyler's as if she were seeing him for the first time. Gambling debts? She whispered. Tyler took a small, hesitant step toward her. Emily, please, I was going to tell you. $65,000, I said evenly, my voice quiet but cutting through the silence like a blade. That's what you owe, isn't it? Emily's head whipped toward me, her face crumpling in disbelief. Tyler froze in place, the truth laid bare. The recording continued, relentless. By Thursday, we'll be gone. I'll tell Emily we got a job offer out of state, something urgent. She'll believe me. The old man won't even realize what hit him until we're long gone. Emily made a small, strangled sound, her breath hitching in her throat. Her gaze never left her husband. You were going to take me? She whispered, her voice shaking. Use me as your cover while you stole from my father, and then disappear? Tyler's hands lifted slightly, palms out as if surrendering. Emily, listen, I was desperate. I didn't mean... The recording played one final dagger. Yeah, well, maybe he should have been more careful about who he let into his house. Life lesson, right? I stopped the playback, the silence afterward deafening. Emily stared at Tyler, her lower lip trembling, tears pooling in her eyes. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft, almost fragile, but it carried a steel edge beneath the heartbreak. You called my father a fool, she whispered. You planned to steal from him, from us, and leave me behind in your mess. You lied to me, Tyler. About your job, about the mortgage, about everything. Tyler stepped forward again, glitter still drifting from his clothes like damning evidence he couldn't shake. I did it for us, he said desperately. For us, Emily. I was going to pay them back, I swear. We could have started fresh somewhere else. Fresh? Emily's voice cracked sharply as the first tears fell down her cheeks. Fresh? With stolen money? With my father's money? Her voice rose, raw and broken, cutting through the tension like glass shattering on concrete. You didn't do this for us. You did this for you. Emily, please, Tyler begged, reaching for her, but she stepped back quickly, revulsion flashing across her face. Don't, she said firmly. Don't you dare touch me. For the first time since the trap exploded, Tyler stopped speaking. His chest heaved, his glitter-covered hands curling into fists at his sides. Emily wiped her cheeks roughly, straightening her spine, regaining control inch by inch. When she spoke again, her voice was quiet, cold, decisive. Get out, she said simply. Tyler blinked, stunned. Emily? Out, she repeated, louder this time, her words vibrating with fury she could no longer contain. Get out of my father's house. Right now. Tyler's face hardened, panic finally giving way to anger. You think you can just kick me out? He spat, glitter flying from his lips with every word. Half of everything we own is mine. I'll get my share. Emily let out a bitter laugh, sharp and humorless. Half of what? She demanded. Half the debt? Half the $65,000 you hid from me? Be my guest. She took a step closer, her voice steady, her expression unflinching. But you're not getting another dime of my father's money. Not now, not ever. Tyler's jaw tightened as his glare flicked from Emily to me, his eyes dark with resentment. This is your fault, he hissed. You turned her against me. No, Emily said, her voice firm, cutting through his accusation like a knife. You did that yourself, Tyler, when you decided to steal from my family, when you called my father names, when you lied to me for months. You did this. For a moment, Tyler just stood there, frozen, every excuse stripped from him. Finally, his shoulders sagged, and the fight seemed to drain from his body, leaving only something hollow behind. Without another word, he turned toward the guest room, leaving a glittery trail behind him like breadcrumbs of guilt. I wrapped an arm around Emily as she trembled beside me, tears streaming freely now. Sweetheart, I whispered softly, this isn't your fault. She nodded wordlessly, leaning against me, but her eyes stayed locked on the doorway where Tyler had disappeared, her expression a mix of heartbreak and fury. She had loved him. She had trusted him, and tonight, that trust had shattered into pieces that could never be put back together. Tyler disappeared into the guest room, and moments later the sound of drawers slamming and hangers scraping filled the silence of the hallway. Glitter still clung to his hair, his clothes, his skin, marking him as clearly as guilt itself. Each violent shove of fabric into a duffel bag was another unspoken admission, another nail in the coffin of a marriage built on lies. Emily stood frozen by my bedside, arms wrapped around herself like she was holding her ribs together, her breaths coming in short, ragged bursts. I placed a hand gently on her shoulder, grounding her. "Sweetheart," I whispered softly, "you didn't do anything wrong." She nodded faintly, but her eyes stayed fixed on the doorway. Her world had just split in two, and she was standing on the jagged edge between who she thought Tyler was and the stranger she now saw him to be. 10 minutes later, Tyler reappeared in the hallway, dragging two hastily packed bags, his glitter-covered shoes squeaking softly against the hardwood. He paused at the doorway, his face pale beneath the shimmer that betrayed him. "Emily," he began, his voice low, almost pleading. "We can still work this out. I made mistakes, but we can fix this." Emily didn't move. Her arms stayed crossed, her expression hard, her voice steady despite the tremor beneath it. "There's nothing to fix, Tyler. You lied to me. You used me. You tried to steal from my father and drag me into your mess. We're done." He flinched as if struck, his mouth opening and closing like he wanted to argue, but nothing came out. "Leave your key on the kitchen counter," she added coldly, "and don't contact me. My lawyer will contact yours." Tyler's jaw tightened. For a second I saw the anger flash again behind his eyes, the same desperation that had driven him to this point. "You think this is over?" He spat, his voice hoarse but sharp. "Half of everything we own is mine. I'll take you to court if I have to." Emily's laugh was bitter, humorless, cutting. "Everything we own?" She shot back, her voice like ice. "All we own, Tyler, is debt. $65,000 of it, to people I've never even met. Go ahead. Take your half." I stayed silent, letting her words land, letting him feel the full weight of what he'd destroyed. Tyler's glare shifted to me, his voice low and venomous. "This is your fault," he hissed. "You turned her against me." I met his gaze evenly, refusing to give him the satisfaction of anger. "No," I said calmly. "You did that when you decided to betray her trust and mine." I just shined a light on the truth. For the first time since he walked into my life, Tyler Evans had no comeback. He turned away sharply, his shoulders stiff, his glitter-covered body leaving a sparkling trail of defeat behind him as he descended the stairs. Emily and I followed slowly, her steps unsteady, her breath uneven. In the kitchen, Tyler set his house key down on the counter with a sharp metallic clink, the sound strangely final, like the closing of a vault. He hesitated one last time, his hand tightening around the strap of his bag, and then he glanced back at Emily. "I loved you," he said quietly, his voice barely audible. Emily shook her head, tears spilling freely now. "No," she whispered. "You loved what you thought you could take from us." Without another word, Tyler walked out the front door, slammed it behind him, and a few seconds later we heard his car engine roar to life. The headlights cut briefly across the living room walls as he reversed down the driveway and disappeared into the night. Silence settled heavily over the house, the kind of silence that hums in your bones. Emily sank into a kitchen chair, burying her face in her hands. And for the first time since the glitter bomb exploded, she cried not quiet, restrained tears, but full, guttural sobs that shook her shoulders. I sat beside her, resting a hand on her back, letting her grief wash through the room like a storm we both had to weather. When her sobs finally quieted, I spoke softly. "Emily, listen to me. You are safe now. He can't hurt us anymore." She nodded, her voice broken as she whispered, "I thought I knew him, Dad. I thought he loved me." I squeezed her hand gently. "He wanted you to believe that. That's what people like Tyler do. They make you trust them so they can use you." She stared at the kitchen table for a long moment before finally asking, "What if he tries something? What if he comes back?" I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone, tapping the screen to show her the recorded confession. "If he tries anything," I said evenly, "we have this. His words. His plan. And I installed a security camera. The footage is crystal clear. We have him, Emily. If he pushes, he'll lose. That seemed to steady her, just a little. Over the next several days, the house settled into a strange, fragile quiet. Emily moved into her old bedroom, but I could hear her pacing late at night, the creak of the floorboards marking restless hours. Tyler tried texting her twice short, pleading messages, but she didn't reply. We kept the recordings safe, both the audio and the camera footage, in case he ever made good on his threat to take her to court. He didn't. He couldn't. The evidence against him was too clean, too damning. 3 months passed, and the seasons shifted. The bruises Tyler left on Emily's heart faded slowly, replaced by resolve. Her divorce went through quietly, finalized in under 6 weeks. Tyler didn't contest a thing. His lawyer advised him not to. With gambling debts stacked high and a recorded confession tying him to attempted theft, he had no leverage left to fight. He disappeared from our lives like a shadow at dawn, leaving nothing behind but memories Emily wished she could erase. One early spring morning, I sat in the kitchen sipping coffee when Emily came downstairs, dressed for her first day at her new job at the local library. She smiled faintly as she poured herself a mug and sat across from me. "Morning, Dad," she said softly. "Sleep well?" I nodded. "Like a baby," I replied, savoring the peaceful stillness of a house free from secrets. She sipped her coffee, then glanced up at me with a tiny, wry smile. "Any regrets about the great glitter trap of March?" I chuckled low, shaking my head. "Only that I didn't film his face when it exploded." For the first time in months, she laughed a real laugh, light and unburdened, and the sound filled the kitchen like sunlight. The divorce papers had arrived 2 weeks earlier. Final, irrevocable. Tyler had vanished into whatever dark corners he came from, carrying his debts with him. Emily had started fresh, a steady job, a sense of independence, and a growing confidence I hadn't seen in years. Life was quiet again, and quiet had never felt so good. Later that afternoon, I got a text from Mrs. Patterson, our neighbor down the street. "Heard about your little home security innovation. Think you could help me install one of those glitter deterrents in my study?" My nephew keeps snooping. I laughed so hard I nearly spilled my coffee. Word travels fast in small neighborhoods, apparently. "Maybe I should patent it," I muttered to myself, grinning. As spring warmed the sidewalks and the maples bloomed outside my window, the house felt different, lighter somehow, unburdened. No more hidden agendas. No more manipulative smiles. No more pretending to trust someone who had never earned it. Sometimes, justice comes from courtrooms and lawyers. Sometimes, it comes from trusting your instincts, setting the right traps, and letting people reveal who they really are. And sometimes, if you're lucky, justice sparkles. Spring settled fully over Coeur d'Alene, draping the quiet neighborhood in soft sunlight and budding leaves. 3 months had passed since Tyler Evans walked out of our lives, trailing glitter like a comet losing its light, and each day since had felt like learning how to breathe again. Emily had moved through those first few weeks like a shadow, fragile but determined, rebuilding piece by piece the life she thought she'd lost. Her mornings became steady, methodical coffee at the kitchen table, packing her bag, and heading to the library where she'd started her new job. Books had always been her refuge, and now they were her salvation, the quiet stacks offering a kind of peace Tyler had nearly stolen from her. She didn't talk about him much anymore. When she did, her words were measured, controlled, stripped of anger, but still laced with something quieter, heavier, the lingering ache of betrayal. She'd learned to lock her heart as carefully as I locked the safe upstairs. And I didn't press her. Some wounds heal better in silence. Tyler, on the other hand, didn't vanish entirely, though he probably wished he could. Word trickled back slowly, a mutual acquaintance here, an overheard conversation there. He'd moved 2 towns over, bouncing between cheap rentals, ducking phone calls from creditors and men far less patient than lawyers. His gambling debts, the $65,000 he thought he could erase by robbing his father-in-law, hadn't disappeared when his marriage did. If anything, they'd multiplied. The people he owed weren't the forgiving kind. Rumor had it he'd taken a job hauling freight at a warehouse on the outskirts of Spokane, working night shifts just to keep his head above water, but even that wasn't enough. Sometimes I thought about him, not out of pity, but out of a kind of detached reflection. Tyler had chosen his path, brick by brick, lie by lie, until the ground beneath him collapsed. And though I'd played no hand in his ruin beyond defending my home, my daughter, and myself. Part of me hoped for Emily's sake that someday he'd face the full weight of his choices. Around here, though, life began settling into something better. Emily had grown stronger, steadier, a quiet resilience threading through her every action. I'd watch her sometimes in the mornings, tying her hair back, tucking a notebook under her arm, ready to step out into the world again, and I'd feel an ache of pride I couldn't put into words. My little girl had survived heartbreak and deceit, had stared betrayal in the face, and somehow she was still standing. More than standing, she was thriving. The laughter that returned to our kitchen came slowly, like sunlight thawing frost, but once it came, it stayed. Sometimes we'd joke about the great glitter incident, as Emily called it. Her voice warmed now when she remembered the look on Tyler's face when the cannon exploded. "I swear, Dad," she'd say between laughs, "I'll never forget the sound it made that pop, like poetic justice." I'd grin, shaking my head. "Justice comes in all forms," I'd reply. "Some of it just happens to sparkle." The neighborhood didn't forget either. Somehow, despite my best efforts to keep things private, the story slipped out, not the messy parts about Tyler's debts or his betrayal, but the highlights, the trap, the glitter, the clean escape I'd engineered without ever calling the police. One afternoon, Mrs. Patterson came by carrying a plate of lemon bars and said, "Richard, I heard you've invented a new kind of home security system. Thinking of patenting it?" I laughed so hard I nearly dropped the plate. Word traveled fast after that. A week later, Mr. Jensen from 2 doors down asked if I'd help him set up one of those confetti contraptions for his garage. Apparently, his teenage grandson had been sneaking in to borrow tools without asking. "You're the talk of the block, Hale," he said with a wink. "Our very own security pioneer." I waved him off, but I couldn't help the small, satisfied smile tugging at the corner of my mouth. Despite the neighborhood's amusement, I knew deep down the glitter trap had been about far more than spectacle. It wasn't just about outsmarting Tyler, though I'll admit there was a certain satisfaction in watching his arrogance literally blow up in his face. It was about protecting Emily, her safety, her trust, and her future. It was about reclaiming control in a situation designed to strip it from me. And maybe, just maybe, it was about proving something to myself, that 62 wasn't old, that sharp eyes and sharper instincts don't dull just because the years pass. The safe upstairs still sat in its usual place, bolted into the closet floor, but it didn't hold the same weight it used to. What mattered now wasn't what was inside, but what we'd built around it. Trust rebuilt brick by brick, the walls of our home restored stronger than before. Every time I opened it, I remembered the night I almost lost everything, and how close we'd come to living in Tyler's carefully constructed fiction. And every time, I was grateful I hadn't ignored my instincts, grateful I'd listened to that quiet voice telling me something wasn't right. One evening in late May, Emily and I sat on the porch, sipping iced tea as the sun dipped low behind the maples. The soft hum of cicadas filled the spaces between our words. "Do you think he'll come back?" she asked quietly, her voice more curious than afraid. I took a slow sip before answering. "No," I said finally. "He's too proud, and there's nothing left here for him. He wanted control, and he lost it. Men like that don't come back. They just find a new place to run." Emily nodded, thoughtful, her fingers tracing the condensation on her glass. After a pause, she said, "I wish I'd seen it sooner." I reached over, resting my hand gently on hers. "Sweetheart, it wasn't your job to see it. You loved him. You trusted him. That's not a weakness. That's who you are. Don't let him take that away from you." Her eyes softened, glimmering faintly in the fading light, and she squeezed my hand in quiet gratitude. That night, long after Emily went upstairs, I sat alone in the kitchen, the hum of the refrigerator filling the quiet. I thought about how close we'd come to losing everything, not just money, but trust, safety, and the peace of our lives. And I thought about Tyler, somewhere out there, living with the choices he'd made, probably still brushing stray flecks of glitter out of his car seats. It struck me then how strange justice can be. Sometimes it comes from judges, courtrooms, and lawyers. Sometimes it comes in silence, in the quiet knowledge that the truth survived, even when trust didn't. And sometimes, just sometimes, justice explodes in a cloud of gold and silver, sticks to your skin, and refuses to let go. When I finally climbed the stairs to bed, I paused by the slightly open door of the guest room, now stripped bare, the bed neatly made. The emptiness of it felt like closure, a final period on a chapter neither of us would choose to reread. Life had moved forward. We had, too. And though betrayal had carved its scars deep, we'd learned to live past them, stronger for having faced them head on. And maybe that's what I wanted Emily to see most. That survival isn't just about locking doors or setting traps. It's about trusting yourself, holding your ground, and refusing to let someone else define your story. The night Tyler Evans set out to rob me, he thought he was clever, invisible, unstoppable. Instead, he ended up exactly what he feared most. Exposed, unmasked, unforgettable, marked forever by his own arrogance, and of course by a little bit of glitter. Summer crept into Coeur d'Alene slowly, the kind of quiet, golden warmth that makes the world feel softer, gentler, as though time itself has forgiven you. By then, life in our house had finally returned to something resembling peace. The nights were calm again, the silence no longer sharp with tension, but filled instead with the soft hum of ordinary living. Emily had settled into her new routine at the library, her days filled with books, research requests, and quiet smiles that came more easily now than they had in months. Watching her slowly reclaim herself, piece by piece, was like watching sunlight return after a long winter. There were still moments, of course moments, when I'd catch her staring out the kitchen window, lost in thought, her coffee growing cold between her hands. In those moments, I'd recognize the lingering weight of betrayal, the quiet ache of trust broken too violently to ever be fully restored. But she carried it differently now, not as a wound, but as armor. Emily had grown sharper, stronger, tempered like steel by fire. Tyler, meanwhile, had disappeared into the margins of our lives. We heard nothing of him for weeks at a time, until the occasional rumor drifted through whispers of missed payments, late-night arguments outside dingy apartments, a life unraveling thread by thread. The last I heard, he'd taken up work at a freight yard, long hours for little pay, still drowning beneath the weight of debts he could no longer outrun. Sometimes, I'd wonder if he still cursed my name in the dark, blaming me for exposing him. But the truth was simpler. Tyler hadn't been destroyed by me or my glitter trap. He'd been destroyed by his own choices, each lie and gamble pulling him deeper into the pit he dug with his own hands. The glitter was just a spotlight, revealing what had been there all along. One evening in late June, Emily and I sat together on the porch as the sun melted into the horizon, painting the neighborhood in shades of gold and fading rose. The cicadas buzzed low, and the air smelled faintly of blooming lilacs from Mrs. Patterson's yard. Emily set her glass of iced tea on the railing, her fingers tracing slow, absent-minded patterns in the condensation. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked quietly. "Setting the trap?" I looked out at the yard, where the shadows stretched long across the grass, and thought carefully before answering. "No," I said softly. "Not for a second. It wasn't just about protecting money, Emily. It was about protecting you." She nodded slowly, her shoulders relaxing as she exhaled a breath she seemed to have been holding for months. For a while, neither of us spoke, just sat there in the fading light, listening to the soft music of the summer evening wrapping itself around us. Sometimes neighbors would still bring it up, half joking, half awed. Mr. Jensen teased me about patenting the hail glitter deterrent. Mrs. Patterson claimed her grandkids were obsessed with the story, imagining Tyler coated in silver and gold, like some bizarre cautionary tale. I'd laugh along politely, but deep down I knew it had never really been about cleverness or revenge. It had been about instinct, the kind of instinct you earn through a lifetime of paying attention to the smallest details, trusting the whispers of unease most people ignore. And maybe that was the lesson in all of it. Not to stop trusting people, but to trust yourself first. That night, after Emily went upstairs, I lingered in the kitchen alone, nursing the last of my coffee as the house settled around me. The walls were quiet, the air still, and for the first time in a long time, I realized I wasn't waiting for footsteps on the stairs or secrets whispered into the dark. I wasn't watching shadows anymore. There was nothing left to watch for. We had survived. I turned off the lights, climbed the stairs, and paused for a moment outside the door of the guest room, the room where Tyler had planned everything, the room where it had all begun to unravel. It stood empty now, the bed neatly made, a faint shimmer of long-forgotten glitter still caught in the grain of the floorboards beneath the window. I smiled faintly, a quiet, private smile. It was strange, the way life sometimes writes its endings for you. Sometimes justice comes in cold courtrooms, ink on legal documents, and signatures on dotted lines. And sometimes it comes in small, deliberate acts, in trusting your instincts, in refusing to be fooled, in protecting what matters most. As I stepped into my own room and closed the door behind me, I thought about the safe upstairs, still locked tight, and how little it meant compared to the person sleeping down the hall. That was what mattered. That was what I'd been protecting all along. Tyler thought he could outsmart me. He thought I was old, slow, too tired to notice. He thought the past 62 years had dulled my senses. But he'd been wrong. And when the moment came, when the trap finally snapped shut, he learned the truth the hard way. Sometimes the quietest people see the most, and sometimes justice sparkles. And that's where we'll leave this story for today. If you enjoyed following along this journey, the twists, the choices, and the unexpected justice, we'd love to have you stay with us for more. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next story. Every week, we bring you more gripping tales of family, secrets, and the surprising turns life can take. And we want to hear from you, too. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Tell us where you're watching from and what moments of this story struck you the most. Your support helps us continue creating these stories and building a community of people who love them as much as you do. Thank you for watching, and remember, sometimes the smallest choices reveal the biggest truths. See you in the next story.